Okay, so I wanted to follow on from what I was talking about in the last video regarding techniques. So, the technique that I use is kind of an expansive one. So, I bring the awareness into the present moment and the sense perceptions, so visual. So, I'll focus on something, start with something small. So, I'm focusing on the phone right now, and then I'm expanding my awareness to the surrounding area. So it moves out into the peripheral and the sounds. Just be highly aware of everything that I'm perceiving. And then the sounds outside moves my awareness out the way. I'm aware of my body, all the physical sensations, breathing, and then I just make everything part of the one awareness, moving it out of the way, taking it all in, just being focused and aware. And then that focus expands. So just being highly aware of everything in this moment. And observe the mind and the emotions as part of this presence. And when dialogue would come in, and the thought streams, I would get pulled into them, and then I would catch myself. I would remember as soon as that happened. Again, attention into the present moment, and then gradually those periods where you're lost in the dream of thought, start to become shorter, and you kind of join the gaps and just practicing this over and over as much as possible all the time. And it's more difficult in certain situations to come back, and it may be after that you come back into the present moment. Certain situations are very easy, so like me sitting here now, it's easy to you know be empty. There's no challenge, but then the effort stops. The effort to do so, it stops being an effort, and it starts to become like a default state, and you're more moving into thought from the space, from that perspective, than you are moving into the space from the thought. And then the more you do this, a space starts to open up within. So you're kind of expanding the space within you. I'm trying to describe it as best as I can without the words that I've got. But it's just practice, and as much as possible all the time, bring yourself back into the present. It becomes not so much a case of being thoughtless all the time as it is, observing the thought stream. From that space you can observe it, but when you're in it, you can't. You're living it, you're not when you're identified with it, you can't observe it. So some of the benefits of awakening, um, and some of the misconceptions. The mind makes it such an elusive thing. Like, you're gonna achieve something and undergo some sort of transformation that immediately fixes everything, but there's an element of that, but it's it's not so much. It's more of a it's much more simple than the mind makes it seem. It's very difficult to explain. It's like a perspective shift. So you're shifting your perspective, and then you're living in a space that's comfortable. It's just like anything. You practice it and you get better at it, and you find that you've been very close to it the whole time, and the mind, will question it and say, is awakening real? Is enlightenment real? And it'll always just be a question for the mind and the ego until it's actually experienced. Does that space? The space is the best way I can kind of describe it, I think, in a word. It's not like the space is separate from the mind entity. Essentially, it's the same. Everything is the same thing, if that makes sense. It's the mind entity is part of the space. Everything is part of the space. It's a paradox of it that's very difficult to describe. You can only get so far with words. So the benefits, it gives you that, again, space to observe yourself, see things for what they are, observe the ego, observe your behaviour, and then from there you have the opportunity to then change it for the better. And then you can start to work on yourself with that perspective, and the insights that you get, and the simplicity of the problem that you were lost in before is profound. I think one of the biggest things is, we talk about the end of suffering in Buddhism and some of these spiritual traditions. That background feeling of something's not right, that background feeling of at times dread and the undertone of depression and the anxiety and the worry, and that unease is kind of gone for the most part, and replaced with a sense, like a deep knowing that everything's actually alright, everything's okay, all is well, everything's fine. It's hard to describe this part. It's not like all that, like I explained before, with the unease and the depressive tendencies doesn't exist anymore. It's still there. It's just from the perspective of the space. You can see it for what it is, and it becomes trivial. So it's not felt deeply anymore. It becomes superficial in a sense. That reality becomes thin, or that reality is kind of enclosed, and you move into a space of everything's okay, really. there's not as much energy spent on mind activity, which seems to take up a lot of energy, and you realise how it's physical energy that it's taking up, and it's sapping your energy, going into these especially negative thought streams. When you move away from that, then all this kind of energy starts to flow through you, and you're awake, and you're not lethargic and depressed. You feel alive. You kind of feel like an alien that's arrived on this planet for the first time, and you're seeing everything as if it's brand new. The sense perceptions are heightened, and you can appreciate things in their beauty much more freely. And things seem simple, and all of these questions that you had before, these existential questions about the nature of reality, don't matter. They matter from the perspective of the seeker of truth, the mind, the ego, but in reality they're not real. um, um, I don't think it's the question of, are you going to be detached from things and not be able to enjoy it or get involved in the pleasures that you did before of all sorts of things. I don't think you can truly appreciate these things when you're lost in it. It's too intense. There's lightness to things. When you move into that space, there's a lightness to things, and you can enjoy things. And it's not like you don't experience the highs and lows of emotion, they just don't have a hold on you. You don't need them. You don't need them. So it's just practice. It's so close and it's so simple. The awakened state is such a simple thing. It's, whenever you have, it's moving into that space as much as possible. Whenever you have, moments pre-shift where you're in that state, the awakened, the enlightened state, you'll have been in that state plenty of times. It's just recognising it consciously for what it is, and then practicing that, and then that becoming your baseline, in a sense, is all it means. But bring your attention into the present moment, and then just sit in it, just relax into it. Don't try and fight the mind, just watch and keep practicing. Just watch. It's when you can relax into that state of presence, that you relax into it, is when that space starts to open up inside you. But all it is just like anything else, all it is practice. And I think you just need to find the practice or the technique that suits you, for the personality or whatever, to allow you to move into that state of presence more often. But that'll do for now.